Welcome back, everyone, to the cigar smoke-filled back room. I am Doug with Tusk Consulting, tuskconsulting@gmail.com, tuskconsulting@gmail.com. If you are a pro-gun Republican and you are looking for political consulting help, drop me a line at that email address and we'll make an arrangement. If you are not a pro-gun Republican, I don't want you. In today's video about the series of things that are not discussed enough in politics or not discussed honestly enough, we are going to talk about turnout models. What are they, how they compare to persuasion models, etc. Before we get too far into this, today's cigar is an Oliva. Again, not sponsors to the program, but boy, it sure would be nice, wouldn't it? And our bottle of the day, that I can't hide because of the landscape, is Redbreast 15, an Irish whiskey, because we just had St. Patrick's Day recently, Sláinte. Anyhow, let's talk about turnout models. And first, let's define a turnout model versus a persuasion model. So a persuasion model of politics is where we argue, we debate, we present our case for an issue or a set of issues, and we try to convince people that we have the better solutions than our opponent. Once upon a time, I'm sure America was in a persuasion model of politics. We are not today. And part of the reason we're not is because it's simply inefficient to argue and persuade when instead I could turn people out to simply overwhelm my opponent. And that is because a typical turnout for an election may be 50% of the registered voters. And registered voters are only about 3/4 of the 18 plus population anyway. So if only half of the registered voters show up, and let's say 74% of the 18 plus population is actually registered, that means that 37% of the 18 plus is what shows up on election day. So in case you're sitting there thinking, oh, we're a representative republic that has ruled by majority, do we? I'm here to tell you we do not. And in this low, where we have like 50% turnout, the amount of effort it takes to win an argument on its merits is a lot more expensive in terms of money, in terms of time on the stump, in terms of media buys. That's very expensive and time consuming. But convincing somebody that maybe wasn't going to go vote to get out and vote that agrees with me anyway, I don't have to persuade them. I just have to say, hey, go vote. Remember, hey, yeah, come on, it's the first Tuesday after the first Monday. Go vote. That's much easier to do. It's an easier lift. Campaign resources are finite. This is more efficient than this. Someday, America may get to the point where we have 75, 80+% turnout. And when that happens, now trying to get that last couple percent that's of the apathetic voters, or in that 20% that isn't likely to show up, that may become much harder to do. But trying to persuade the 80% of voters, a couple percent within that 80%, to agree with me versus my opponent may become more efficient. And when that happens, we'll probably have a healthier civil dialogue. We don't have that today because it's not efficient to have it today. Is that cold and calculating? Yes, it is. This is the battlefield we're on, not the battlefield we wish we were on. You fight on the battlefield you're on, not on the one you wish you were on, okay? So don't sit there and make out a wall of text on your lit piece trying to persuade people. That's inefficient. You need name ID hits so people remember who you are, and you need to remind people to go vote. That's what wins elections in this environment. Okay. So, a turnout model is a turnout model of the people who actually show up and vote. To be clear, if you don't show up and vote, I don't care about your opinion. It's only the people that show up to vote that count. And we can look at this in a number of ways. We can look at it in terms of demographic breakdown. We can look at it in terms of ideological breakdown, in level of information that they have, in what time period we're in. Are we in a presidential year? Are we in a gubernatorial year? Are we in an odd-numbered election year for local races, etc.? All these things can make a difference. So let's start with demographic breakdown. Starting with gender. So males and females are not equally represented in the registered voter population. And before anybody starts screaming about the patriarchy, ladies, you win this one, straight up. Women, at least in Ohio anyway, where I am, have about a 3.4% inherent advantage over men. That's how it is, okay? More women are registered to vote. Therefore, from a girl power standpoint, y'all get 3.4% advantage coming out of the gate for two candidates that are otherwise equal. Same qualifications, same everything else. If you happen to be a woman or have a name that could be a female name, you have a 3.4% edge over a dude. Just how it is. Again, you can like that, you can not like that. That's how it is, okay? And that's true even in very conservative places. I live in a very rural county of Ohio. We have multiple female office holders. We elect female judges. We have female justices of our state Supreme Court. It's not a problem. Our coroner is a woman. It's fine. It's not a big deal. This is, in fact, a good thing. And smart political operatives will try to recruit female candidates because every little bit of edge and advantage helps. And if I can get a 3.4% demo bump just because I have a candidate with a female name, it's good, right? Why would I pass that up? If I've got two equal candidates, it only makes sense to run the woman over the man because, hey, she gets 3.4% walking out of the gate. About age breakdown. So when it comes to age, we're going to talk about both the percent in, and I'm throwing a lot of numbers at you today, so please try not to let your eyes glaze over. We're going to talk about the percent that they are in the pool of registered voters, and then we're going to talk about how likely they are to go vote. So let's start with the first group, which is 18 to 29-year-olds. This is roughly 20% or a fifth of the registered voters, and these are low propensity voters. Why? Well, they're busy. If you're not 18 to 29, you may not remember how busy a time that was. These are people that are finishing up their education. These are people that are trying to start a family. And if you're, changing diapers and running kids to soccer practice and dance class and going to PTO meetings, and of course you're also trying to get your career going at the same time, it's a very demanding schedule. You may not have the time to be as engaged in the political process as you would like to be, right? And maybe you want to go vote, but you feel like you don't know enough about the candidates that you'd be, making the right decisions. And so a lot of people either just space out on it, they don't have the time to mess with it, or frankly, they're intimidated by the processes, so they don't get involved. 30 to 44-year-olds is the next bracket, roughly 23% of the registered voters, and they are also slightly below average in terms of their propensity to vote, higher than the 18 to 29-year-olds, but still somewhat below average. Your 45 to 64-year-old bracket, now we're slightly above average in terms of propensity to vote, roughly a third of the registered voters. This is where you get into people who either have older children or are empty nesters. They're looking ahead to their retirement. They've got some savings, lined up, 401k, what have you, IRAs, and they're starting to realize that the decisions that government makes can have a pronounced impact on their economic viability as they look ahead to retirement. And now they start getting concerned, and they have the time, and they're at a place in their careers where maybe they've got a little bit more time available to them, and they say, hey, I want to make sure that what I've worked hard for doesn't get destroyed by stupid government policies that are, unfriendly to the economy. And so they become more engaged. And of course, they also see their own children growing up and, going off to become productive members of society. They want to make sure the society is going to be okay for them too, right? And then you get the 65 plus year olds. And these are your high propensity voters. Roughly 23% of the registered voters, at least here in Ohio, and they're very high propensity. They are living usually on fixed incomes, their retirement plan, their 401k, they're living off it now. They're living off Social Security. And by the way, this is why Social Security and Medicare are so difficult to touch. Because the people who want to reform these systems and make them solvent for the future have to contend with the fact that people that are receiving the benefits now are extremely high propensity voters. And if they feel like you're threatening their nest egg, they're going to take it out on you. And this is just how it is in America. Let's talk about racial breakdowns. Again, here in Ohio, roughly 84% of the electorate is white, slightly above average in terms of voter propensity. African Americans, roughly 12% of the population, slightly below average voter propensity. Asians, maybe 2% of the population, kind of average propensity. Hispanics, close to 3%, well below average, though, in terms of their propensity to vote. But that is not as cut and dry as those numbers make it seem to appear. I have seen demographic breakdowns that are much more regionally specific than just state level, the numbers I just gave you. Here where I live in a rural county in Ohio, and the demographic breakdown out here, lest you believe what the national media tells you that, you know, or 90% of African Americans are Democrats. And that may be true in terms of the nation as a whole. But it may not be true in the place that you live. Where I live in this rural county in Ohio, the average vote, we're 2-to-1 Republican to Democrat, okay? That's just the way it is. And out here, African American voters in my rural county are, on average, Republican. Because it's not what you look like, it's who you are. It's where you socialize, you know, where you work. Are you an entrepreneur? You know, what social circles do you move in? What socioeconomic stratosphere layer are you in? What your educational level is, etc., etc. And really, that's a good thing, right? It shouldn't be about what you look like. It should be about what your values are. It should be about, you know, what you're doing with your life. That really should determine you, the individual, should determine, you know, what your political affiliation is. Not this again, what the national media tries to sell you, which is that people of a certain skin tone are automatically in this category. Because, hey, newsflash, that's racist, okay? I don't hold with that. What about educational level? If you have a high school diploma or less, maybe you're a high school dropout, maybe you have an 8th grade education, whatever, you are a lower propensity voter. Just how it is, okay? If you have a high school diploma and some college classwork, then you are an average propensity voter. If you have a college degree, either associates or bachelor's, which is about 25% of the population, you are high propensity voters. And if you have a graduate degree, which is less than 10% of the population, you are extremely high propensity to vote. So in case you ever wondered why doctors and lawyers and ministers, you know, people that have a theology doctorate, etc., a terminal degree, why they seem to have such a disproportionate impact on politics in America, it's because they vote. So it doesn't matter if you have an 8th grade education or you are a PhD. One person, one vote, right? So don't let these percentages drag you down. It doesn't matter what your educational level is. If you go vote, you're going to help the people in your slice of the demographic. Because remember, politicians care about the people that show up and vote. They listen to the people that show up and vote. So if you go and vote, more people like you are going to be listened to by the people in power. It's just the way the system works. Household income. Another uncomfortable conversation to have here. If your household income is $50,000 or less, lower propensity voters. Just again, how it is. If you are between $50,000 and $100,000 household income, average propensity. And if your household income is above $100,000 a year, you're a higher propensity voter. And this shouldn't surprise anybody. Politicians love listening to rich people because they can be donors, right? And running a campaign is expensive, and they need money, and they want your money, right? So if you write them a check, and the more money you make, the more disposable income you probably have, then they're going to be very amenable to the concerns that you have. We are not a plutocracy. This is not ruled by the wealthy, but they do show up and vote in higher numbers. So again, if you're making $30,000 a year, go vote. If at the next election cycle, 50,000 and under suddenly became a high propensity demographic, I guarantee you the average elected official would care a whole lot more about poor people than they do today, okay? If they don't, they won't. Politicians care about those who show up, full stop, because they get their jobs by by staying in office, by getting elected. It's for real. Rural, urban, and suburban. Rural voters tend to be higher propensity voters. Urban voters tend to be lower propensity voters. Suburban voters kind of somewhere in between. Ideological breakdown. Republicans are about 30-ish% of the registered voters, but we are higher propensity voters. Democrats, on the other hand, are kind of average propensity, but they make up 38% of the registered voters. While the swing voters, the independents, the people that the media tells you are this crucial group that you have to win in order to be elected, even though Mitt Romney won independents but was never president. It's funny how that works. Independents are low propensity voters. Just how it is. So again, don't listen to the media about some of this stuff because they tell you things that are just flat out lies. You don't have to win independents to win a race. You don't. You just have to have enough people that agree with you to show up. You don't have, this is not a persuasion model. We don't need swing voters to come to our side. It would be nice if they did. I want them to, but I don't need them to in order to achieve victory. But ideological demographic slices are not just about partisan affiliation. There's also the factor of religious identity. And I'm not going to go deep into this. I just want to give one case study on it. There was a time in the not too distant past here in America where if you were a Catholic voter, you were almost automatically a Democrat. That has changed. And it has changed because the Democrat Party has managed to alienate them. They were a core constituency of the Democratic Party not that long ago. It really was true. If you were a Catholic voter, you were almost certainly a Democrat once upon a time. Today, that is not the case. And why is it? It's because the Democrat Party has adopted an extraordinarily hostile position to the life issue. Now, again, I'm a gun guy, right? But the life issue has forced Democrats to alienate their Catholic base that once they had. They simply don't have it anymore. And the Catholic voter looked at this life issue, which is very important, and said, hey, no, what the Democrat Party at the national level is saying is completely at odds with what I firmly believe in my heart, what my faith instructs me, and I cannot hold with this. And so, frankly, this is, in my mind, a good sign because it is an example of a demographic shift based on issues that parties are taking. So it is a kind of persuasion. It's kind of on the large scale, and it's kind of taken place over, frankly, decades, okay? But it has changed the nature of politics in America. And it's changed it, frankly, in favor of Republicans, who tend to be good on the life issue, whereas Democrats simply are not. But that's, again, I don't want to go too deep into religion, and that's all I'm going to say on it. How well informed a voter is also makes an impact. If somebody's a very highly engaged voter, they're very well informed of the issues and on the candidates, they're going to be a higher propensity voter. Low information voters, I'm sure you've heard that term, they're going to be lower propensity voters. And then, of course, you've got all the way in between. Lastly, you got to understand what time it is. And I don't mean on your watch. I mean, is it a presidential election year? Here in Ohio, in even-numbered years that are not presidential years, we have gubernatorial cycles. So we elect governor and all the other executive offices of the state in those years. Presidential years are very high-propensity voting events. Gubernatorial years, kind of average. And then we got your odd-numbered years, so-called off-year elections, where we elect, mayors and city councilmen and township trustees and school board. And those are low-propensity turnout models. Especially when you consider who's most impacted by school board decisions. Oh yeah, it's those parents of school-aged children who, because of their age, are lower propensity voters as well. Now, they maybe should be more engaged because they've got literally a stake in the future of the society, but by nature of where they are in their lives, they're not as engaged and they tend not to show up. So you can get some extraordinarily low turnout numbers in an odd-numbered year school board race, which really is sad, okay? Look, that which governs closest to the people governs best. So you should be engaged in your school board races. You should be engaged in who your township trustee or your mayor is, okay? You should care about these things. But frankly, the current battlefield is that the average voter is less interested in them than they are in voting for president or senator or governor or congressman or what have you, because those are big sexy races, right? Just how it is. So, in summary, understand the electorate, understand the demographic breakdowns, understand how likely someone is to go vote, and how easy or hard it may be to turn them out to vote if there's somebody that agrees with you anyway. If you understand that, and you understand the time period in which your fight is occurring, you can get a turnout model built that favors your candidates and your issues advancing. And look, it's not always going to be that way. There's going to be years where you can win, and there's going to be years where you're playing defense because the deck is stacked against you, okay? You make hay while the sun shines. If the sun is shining, you make your advances. And if it isn't, you play defense and hold and try to block the adversaries out. And that's how it works. Again, I am Doug with Tusk Consulting, tuskconsulting@gmail.com, tuskconsulting@gmail.com. Thanks for your attention. See you in the next one.